big week 8. Once again, we had a couple losses. 2, 12, 16 lost. So did 20, 22, and 24. We'll get into a couple of those losses as we break down and review the games. But, Coach, I'm going to ask you first. I'm going to ask you, what kind of piqued your interest this weekend?
The Ohio State loss was absolutely devastating because remember a year ago, Ohio State got beat badly by Iowa. That kept them out of the playoff. This loss may keep them out of the playoff even if they run the rest of the table.
I think the biggest thing for me is this is the part of the season where the grind really gets you. Not only the coaches, but the players. It's a point of the season where you can't leave a stone unturned. You've got to do the little things again. It's almost you have to reboot at this point of the season because if you don't, you're going to miss a lot of things and you're going to make mistakes. Some of the good teams that we saw either lost or played poorly this weekend. They weren't hitting on all cylinders. But this is the time of the season where you really have to turn it on and you've got to put your pedal to the metal. And the reason why is if you're going to make a playoff run, if you're going to make a conference run, now is the time to do it. You can't wait to the end of the season. You've got to do it now. When it's the toughest point of the season, you're beat up, you're battered, you're bruised. You've got to get everybody focused and rebooted and put on the same page.
Well, undefeated Ohio State, NC State, and Cincinnati lost, and that only leaves UCF, USF, Clemson, Alabama, and Notre Dame. Coach, what are your thoughts on these remaining undefeated teams?
Well, I think USF, they were very fortunate against Connecticut. Connecticut had never been competitive in a game this entire year, and they had USF on the road. Cincinnati wasn't that great a football team. UCF without Milton, the quarterback, they're a good team. With him, they're an outstanding football team. I think UCF runs the table. Unfortunate that their game with Georgia Tech last year was canceled because of a hurricane. Their game this year against North Carolina was canceled because of a hurricane. And that really hurts them in the long run. Notre Dame will not play a team the rest of the year that has less than 3 losses. And so I think Notre Dame goes all the way. Alabama, I don't see anybody competing with Alabama, but I will say this. If you get into the fourth quarter close to Alabama, Mark, you have a chance to beat them because they'll panic. The reason I say that, you're used to having a game over at halftime. You're not used to, and you have a tendency to exaggerate how bad things are. If you can stay close to Alabama in the fourth quarter, you got a chance. But I don't think that anybody's going to be able to do that as long as Tua's a quarterback.
And Tua or Jalen Hurts, it doesn't matter. You got to pick your poison. If Tua's out of the game, Jalen Hurts comes in, he can beat you with his arm, he can beat you with his leg. So for Alabama, if they get to the fourth quarter, I don't even see him playing in the fourth quarter, even against LSU in a couple of weeks with Tua playing into the fourth quarter. LSU's a heck of a football team, but Alabama is superior this year in college football.
Well, as we've seen and we hear about Alabama and the process, and we talk about the culture. Well, maybe we're starting some culture because Scott Frost won his first game. And maybe the reflective of that culture down in Tuscaloosa is Alabama and Nick Saban kept it easy on his friend Jeremy Pruitt, because if you watch that game, that thing could have been 90-0. That was ugly. But I have a question on culture, and Coach, I'm going to ask you. You look at Purdue, Ohio State. We'll talk about the X's and O's and passes and runs here in a little bit. But what I want to say is Jeff Brom, I know he's only 11-9 in his first 2 years there at Purdue, but if you look what he took over and you watch that on Friday night, and you watch that excitement and how they went from 0-3 and then they're putting the pedal to the metal right now and going after it aggressively. Coach, I want to ask culture. What is the importance of culture, and is there any substitute for that for winning at big-time college football?
Now, I think you have to establish a culture of winning, a culture of commitment to each other, a culture of being the very best we can. Purdue lost their first 3 games, but let's remember, they lost 2 of them because they had an unnecessary roughness penalty in the last minute of the game, which really cost them. So they very easily could have been 5-1 at this stage. I think it's a signature win, make no mistake about it. Jeff Brom will be able to look back years from now and say, the game against Ohio State really turned their program around. But here is the big thing. He now has to play Michigan State this week. All the fans are going to be talking about the great performance against Ohio State. They're going to be talking about Rondale Moore, 12 receptions, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he must have caused 20 missed tackles by Ohio State. Are they going to talk about that game, or are they going to be looking forward to Michigan State? This is the key, that they're going to be able to bounce back. I say that mentally. Put Ohio State behind you and focus on Michigan State. Are they mature enough to do that? That's the next test that Jeff Baum will have, no doubt. Great win. They understand, and they believe now.
Mark, you've been a part of cultures at college level and at the top of the professional football game. You've been around teams. What's your thoughts on culture and what are you seeing right now in Purdue?
Well, a win like that, you can sell your football team to get everybody to buy in to do the right things, because guess what? You did the right things against Ohio State. You should be able to do that every week. If we can get that out of the players every week, and we know we can get that effort, we can beat anybody. We can go ahead and just go out and play against anybody, throw caution to the wind. It's a confidence builder for the football team and the program. It's a huge win for Jeff Brown, and he's done a terrific job at Purdue. He took him to a bowl game last year, changed the program and the culture last year, but a win like this helps in recruiting, it helps in the locker room, and it helps in the fan base, because now everybody's buying in. Because this team is just, as Coach said, is just a play or two away from being 5-1 right now, or 6-1 right now instead of 4-3.
Well, there's a lot of football left this year, and we have a couple more shows left this year, and you know what? We've kind of moved it up. So now what I want to give you is a quote of the week from one of our competitors who wrote in, John Nugent. He said, Mark May, smart, knowledgeable, and quick-witted. Lou Holtz is another savvy voice. Miss seeing these guys together. My favorite Lou Holtz quote, dumb loses more games than smart wins. Well, I would tell you one of my favorite Lou Holtz quotes is, you never had the same team 2 weeks in a row. So we're going to get ready to review our Week 8 games, and we're going to see how many of those teams are going to be the same team in Week 9, because we have quite a few reviews of the same team. Now, with that said, here we go. Well, now it's time to review our Week 8 College Football Show contest. You know, in this contest, we had 4 games this week. NC State at number 3 Clemson, 2 undefeated teams. Mark, you won that one on a spread. Number 12 Oregon went to Pullman at number 25 Washington State. Mike Leach, the Pirate. Coach, you won that one. Number 22 Mississippi State at number 5 LSU in Death Valley. And this is, I look, we had a same score. So I think after we're going to do a coin flip, and then we're going to do rock, paper, scissors. We'll determine who gets that one. But then Ohio State at Purdue, that's a push because neither one of you picked Purdue. I did, though. So let's start at our first game. Undefeated, ACC Atlantic. Number 16 NC State went to Clemson. Trevor Lawrence and the boys, 41-7. And that wasn't even, I mean, this wasn't even a game. Ryan Finley and NC State Wolfpack were never, ever in this game. Oh, by the way, maybe other than Alabama, Clemson's the only team that can run, that can pass, and that can play defense. Mark, thoughts?
This game went exactly how I thought it was going to be. I didn't think North Carolina State had enough players on each side of the ball, particularly in the trenches, to compete with Clemson in this game. And I think Clemson dominated both sides of the ball in the trenches. On the offense, they didn't have a great day running the ball, but they protected Trevor Lawrence. He threw for over 300 yards in this football game, very efficient with the football. And the other thing on defense, they held them to 7 points. That's the key. When you're going up against a great quarterback and an undefeated team, if you could hold them to 1 touchdown, you're going to win every time, Coach. And that's the reason why Clemson was dominant in this football game, is because they won that game up front in the trenches.
The reason they won the football game, Mark, they were a better football team in every state. Clemson did not run the ball particularly well, averaged 2.8 yards per rush. But what was great was to see Trevor Lawrence throw for over 300 yards. Here's a true freshman that really has come in and replaced the starter last year, Kelly Bryant, and he's done a great job with Clemson. But the key to this football game was Clemson's defense. Their front four is outstanding. And when you hold North Carolina State, which was undefeated, have a great quarterback in Finley, to 2 conversions out of 13 third down opportunities. If you don't convert on third down, you're usually going to end up punting the football. But a tremendous performance. We know that Clemson can run the football. They didn't run it last week. They're going to have to be able to run it against Florida State. But great win for Clemson. And I want to tell you something else. The second hardest place to play is Clemson because their locker room is so disrupted. You can't visit with your team. You never come out there with any enthusiasm, whether before the game or after the game. So let's give their locker room part of the credit.
Number 12, Oregon went into Pullman, Washington in our second game. And the Pirate and his new quarterback, Gardner Minshew, Washington State, they took it to him. 34-20. And oh, by the way, it's not just Mike Leach throwing the ball. His boys can play some defense. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, I thought the key was their defense. They held Oregon to 58 yards rushing, and that's the key with Oregon. They try to be multidimensional on offense with their quarterback and running the ball, and they just couldn't do it in this game. And if you can't be balanced against a Washington State team that you know they're going to throw the ball in this game at least 50 times, they've put it up 52 times. Gardner Minshew had another terrific game, 4 touchdown passes, but he did throw 2 interceptions. But Mike Leach doesn't care about that. He just wants to spread the ball around offensively, get the job done. But the key is what their defense is doing this year. I think is incredibly impressive. That's why this team right now is probably the best team in the North, the way that they're playing on both sides of the ball. But everyone wants to talk about their offense and Gardner Minshew, and they should. But I want to emphasize their defense is much better than it's been. Each year his defense has gotten better at Washington State and Pullman.
This was a tale of 2 different halves. At halftime, Washington State's ahead 27-0. Yep. If it was baseball, you'd be able to say Oregon went 1-1 in the doubleheader. They won the second half. But the amazing thing you mentioned, they held Oregon to 2.4 yards per rush. Washington State had 2 turnovers and still won the football game. In addition to that, they had 4 different receivers with 6 or more receptions. Now think about that. 4 receivers with 6 or more receptions. It makes it very difficult to focus in on one receiver like Purdue having LaRon Moore. That's the guy you got to stop. There's a lot of receivers at Washington State. I think Washington State's for real because you mentioned, Mike, their defense is very good.
And Gardner Minshew did a terrific job with this offense. He's the next great quarterback. He was a highly recruited player out of high school. Even Alabama offered him. And this is a player that's probably going to make his next leap to the NFL. It's not just a system quarterback with this player. This player can make all the throws, make all the correct decisions. I think he's going to be an NFL draft pick probably at least in the first 3 rounds minimum because he's not just a system quarterback. He can make every throw that's out there.
And it must be noted, Gardner Minshew also has probably one of the cooler mustaches we've seen since Magnum P.I., maybe Burt Reynolds. I don't know. So
if he's that good, why didn't he win at East Carolina? He transferred from East Carolina, I believe, did he not?
Yep.
Coach, you of all people
he
know.
did win at East Carolina, and all of a sudden, he's all world. Hey, he's doing very, very well. But let's give Mike Leach an awful lot of credit. His quarterbacks always succeed, but there's no guarantee he'll succeed in the NFL. I hope he does, but there's no guarantee.
Well, Coach, as you know, football is a team sport. And here's another team sport. And, let's talk about spreading the wealth out in Pullman. They sure as heck aren't doing it in Starksville, Mississippi, because number 22 Mississippi State went to Death Valley against number 5 LSU, 19-3. And, it's kind of, your chances of winning are not that great when your leading rusher also throws 4 interceptions. Tough game, tough defense at LSU, and a smart quarterback. Mark.
You look at Dick Fitzgerald for Mississippi State, and you mentioned that he threw the 4 interceptions. And when he's your leading rusher and your leading passer turning the ball over like that, you can't win, particularly if you're playing a tough football team like LSU and a great defense coached by defensive coordinator Dave Aranda. But I think if you look at the offense, Coach, I don't know about this Joe Burrow guy. He finally threw an interception in Tiger Stadium. We got to get rid of this kid. But he played another great game. He protected the ball. It's his first interception at Tiger Stadium at home at LSU. But what he did is he ran the offense. He's an offensive machine when he's running this offense, because he's a terrific manager with the football. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's not going to wow you with 350 yards passing or 100 yards rushing, but what he's going to do is matriculate the ball down the field, make plays, move the chains, keep the defense off the field for you at LSU, and he's going to let the running game do it, and he's going to let the passing game do it. He's going to put points on the board just enough to win, and that's all that counts. As long as you're winning football games, if you win ugly, it's still a win.
That's very well said, Mr. Burrow. Is that your son? I mean, the way you're on him. LSU's got some problems, Mark. Number one, they gave up 5.4 yards per rush to Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, LSU only had 2.4 yards per rush. Their longest run was 12 yards. When you're at LSU and you can't run the football and you don't have a wide open offense, you can't put a lot of points on the board, yeah, their defense is playing very, very well. I cannot believe right now LSU is a top 5 football team. You do not have an offense that is not explosive, not consistent, and can't control the ball on the ground.
But they grind it out, Coach. This is their identity. This is what they do. They're not going to be flashy. They're not going to put up 40 and 50 points on the board. They're going to keep the game close, keep it low scoring, not make mistakes, make you make the mistakes, and go the long distance. They're going to make sure that they play field position football and let you make a mistake.
I'm getting a headache, Mark. Every time they play against a great defensive football team, they end up losing a heartbreaker. How about Florida?
How about Georgia?
Florida played good. Okay, how about Notre Dame in the bowl game last year where Notre Dame beat them? They're a good football team, but you've got to be better and have more imagination on offense. I agree with what Burrows is doing, protecting the football. But by the same token, you cannot live on your defense entirely, and that's what they seem to be doing right now.
Well, gentlemen, we'll do we'll make the bet even bigger for 2 weeks from now, and we'll discuss that because Alabama, LSU, and it's going to be exciting. But it's going to be almost exciting as West Lafayette, Indiana was on Saturday night in our 4th game as the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes went in there. And I'm going to tell you, Jeff Brom has got those Boilermakers fired up. I'm just going to say it. 49-20. Wasn't even close. And they put them down, and they stepped on the gas, and they kept going. Mark, thoughts?
Impressive win by Purdue at home. Here's the key to this football game. I talked about it all season long, and I said it from week 1. If you look at Ohio State, their biggest problem is their defense, not their offense. And I said it in week 1 against Oregon State when Oregon State ran for a couple hundred yards against them, and they're a terrible football team. I said, this team has problems. And then they still had Nick Bosa playing in that game. He's out for the rest of the season. So if you look at their defense, they have problems. They've given up more chunk plays this year at the halfway point than they did the entire season of last year. Here's the key. Against Purdue, they gave up 14 plays of 15 yards or more against Purdue. And this is a Greg Schiano defense that's supposed to be a championship caliber defense. That's what cost them in this football game. Their defense let them down. Their offense had to throw the ball 73 times to try to stay in this game, and they got blown out and embarrassed by Purdue. The same thing happened against Iowa last year. Ohio State, in my opinion, they're out of the playoff race.
Well, when you look at total yards, Ohio State had 546 yards, but they gave up 539. And I think Urban Meyer said it best, and being very honest, that some of their deficiency were exposed. But also, they did not look that impressive against Indiana. We thought TCU was a great win. Turns out TCU right now has a losing record. And so they didn't look that great against TCU. They gave up 33 points, I think, to Minnesota in about 500 yards. I agree with you about the defense. But the fact is Ohio State cannot run the ball, Mark. They rushed for about 3 yards per carry. Out of the 546 yards they had, 470 of it came on passing by Haskins. They have become a football team that has thrown the football, and when your defense is suspect, then you've got to be able to control the ball. You control the clock. You control the game with your offense. You don't just win 3 and out or 3 and score, and all of a sudden on defense. And on defense, they're almost committed to playing total man-free coverage. That's great. If you play man-free, Alabama plays a lot of it, but you got to get pressure on the passer. Ohio State only had, I think, 1 sack in that football game. You don't get pressure on the passer, and then you get a receiver like Rondale Moore. Nobody can cover him in the country. I think he's the most exciting player in college football right now. 12 receptions, 170 yards. They couldn't even, if it was touch tackle, he would have had 170 yards. I mean, the guy is unbelievable, and they could not cover him. And they don't do things that confuse the quarterback. Yards, dropping 5, dropping 8, rushing 9. They don't give you a lot of problems because you know what Ohio State's going to be in, and you look for the mismatch, and Purdue found one. How many times on 3rd down did Rondale Moore make the big play to keep the drive alive?
And not only that, if you look at them offensively, Coach, Purdue was terrific in playing the bend but don't break defense. They let them go up and down the field in between the 20s, and guess what? Pile up all those yards. But Ohio State was in the red zone 5 times and came away with 6 points. You can't win football games doing that.
That's a good point, Mark. 3 times they're down there and did not score a touchdown. But it comes back down again to the offensive line. If you can't run the ball, all of a sudden you don't have a lot of room to spread the receivers to get open, to get cushion. You've got to be able to be physical and run football. And they have 2 great running backs. I tell you, Dobbins and Weber, they are great running backs, but nobody runs well against 11-man defense.
And the other key now for Urban Meyer, guys, how can he get this turned around? Can Urban Meyer get this turned around at the remainder of the season, or will the guys fold? That's going to be the key. I want to watch Ohio State for the remainder of the season.
No, Ohio State, no. Ohio State didn't go fold until Ohio State. Who's got up there? There's too much tradition, but I will say this. Michigan's looking a lot better against Ohio State because that defense is awesome. But they are going to fold, Mark.
Coach C, who folds, but you had to watch this game and think to yourself that maybe Shea Young Kiblin, the 2018 Madden champ, was calling plays with 73 passes thrown on the one side. But I tell you, who you don't have to think twice about was Andy Lopez. Because Andy Lopez listened to the moderator when the moderator said, go to thecrowdsign.com and pick Purdue. You figure out the score. Well, Andy Lopez logged in, he competed in the contest, and he said that Purdue was just a bit off, 40-19. So, hey, Andy Lopez, you got it. Call me back. I'll get you another pick this week. With that said, gentlemen, that is our Crowd Lines College Football Show contest for Week 8 review. And stand by, because we're going to hit the rapid five. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our Week 8 Rapid 5 contest. We had 5 games. Number 20, Cincinnati at Temple. Coach, you picked that one. Colorado. Number 15, Washington. Mark, you won that on the spread. Number 6, Michigan at 24, Michigan State in East Lansing. Mark, you won that one on the spread. Vanderbilt at Kentucky, number 14, Kentucky. Coach, you picked the Wildcats. And the Citadel at VMI in Lexington. Mark, you won that one close. We got friends that are mad at both of y'all. Anyway, we're going to go to game number 1. Number 20.
Wait. I went 7-2 last week. You're giving me those point spread. It's 7-2, and one of the games I lost was VMI. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Let's go back to Vander. Let's go back to
you win or you lose. Don't tell me about anything else. You won it on the point spread.
Let's go back to Vandy and Kentucky. You won the game, but I won the game on the spread.
That doesn't mean a thing. Who won the game?
That's
all really matters.
It does to certain people.
That's true. Well, Coach, if you both pick the same team, one closest to the store gets it on the spread. That's how I'm doing it.
Called a tie.
Well, Coach, ties aren't fun. Come on, Coach. Let's talk about this rapid five,
It's like kissing your brother, but it's like kissing your sister, but a tie is better than kissing your brother.
Well, my in-laws are all in West Virginia. I won't even go there. All right, everybody take a deep breath. Now let's talk about our rapid fire from Week 8. Number 20, Cincinnati, undefeated Luke Fickell at Temple. Coach Jeff Collins has some Philly tough going on in Temple, and I think they're going to spoil it. Temple wins 24-17. Mark.
Overtime game in this game, and it went right down to the wire, and Anthony Russo was terrific in the late part of the game for Temple. Threw a touchdown pass with 49 seconds to go to tie it, threw another one in overtime to win it. This is a defensive game. Both teams played great defense. When your quarterback for Cincinnati can throw for just barely over 100 yards, you're not going to win very many football games, Coach. That was the problem with this game. Tough, hard-fought game, and Temple had some big wins this year. They already beat Maryland. Temple pulls it out in overtime.
Well, the fact is that both teams had approximately 300 yards offense, so it was very balanced. Both teams had 3 turnovers. You can't expect to win a football game with 3 turnovers, and I agree with you. Russo making that great 25-yard pass for a touchdown with 49 seconds remaining, then the 20-yard touchdown pass in overtime. The 2 big plays won it for him. I felt Temple would win the football game. I did not think it would be this close in overtime.
Everybody's talking about UCF, USF. Don't forget about Temple. They could be the spoiler. Colorado at number 15, Washington. And you know what? Colorado got shut down, especially in the second half. 86 yards. Washington wins 27-13. Jake Browning showed why he's a 3-year starter and that senior, 4-year starter and the leader of that team. Mark.
Terrific job by Jake Browning of managing his football team. It wasn't an explosive football game, but he made plays when he had to make plays in this football game. And if you look at this game, Myles Gaskin didn't play in this game. They're terrific running back. They had running back by committee, but they still got the job done when they had to. The defense made plays, which is really impressive because I've talked about this defense all year long, that they're the best defense in the Pac-12, the best defensive secondary, one of the top ones in the country. They got the job done defensively, and their offense held up. Even though they're banged up on the offensive line, banged up at running back, they still got the job done.
They managed to win the football game, but they were not impressive offensively. I agree with you. Their defense is playing outstanding football, getting you the ball in great field position. Jake Browning, I think, had 2 passes over 16 yards for completion. Out of his completion all day, he averaged 10 yards of completion. That's not very, very good for a great football team like Washington. I think Washington's going to struggle. They've lost 2 games now. I think they'll either lose 1 or possibly 2 more before the year's over.
Then they also might keep finding ways to win, like Michigan did, or more importantly, like Michigan State. Michigan handed them the ball like 3 times, like, okay, here's the ball. Now, they did a Philly special up in East Lansing, and that scored that 1 touchdown. But other than that, it was Michigan State has no offense. And we saw that game, 21-7. Michigan just ran it down their throats and back and forth when they weren't handing them the ball. Mark, your thoughts on that?
The defense of Michigan with Don Brown as coordinator is outstanding. When you can hold an opponent to 65 total yards, 15 yards rushing, net yards rushing, that is amazing in today's college football world. Not only that, you talked about the touchdown that Michigan State had. The reason why they had it is because Michigan turned the ball over on about the 10-yard line, and all they had to do was get in the end zone. Besides that, even with an hour and 15-minute lightning delay, where Michigan was stuffed in a small little locker room for over an hour, they still came out and they still just pounded them. Shea Patterson is the quarterback that they needed, threw for 2 touchdown passes in this game. They ran the ball effectively, almost 200 yards rushing, 183 yards on the ground. They dominated this football game. It wasn't even close. This was one of those muggings in a phone booth, Coach. It wasn't even pretty.
No, it really wasn't. And Michigan's getting better and better each and every week. And the defense is outstanding. You know, what is impressive? Michigan State was held to 0 for 12 on 3rd down. Did not complete or were successful on a 3rd down. Under less than 100 yards, you say, what's wrong with Michigan State's offense? Well, the fact is they have 10 starters back from last year. 10 starters from a football team, I think, won over 10 football games last year, and they could not move the ball all against Michigan. I think Michigan's for real. I love what Shane Patterson's doing, and the biggest improvement I see in the Michigan football team, their offensive line's getting better and better each and every week. Early in the year, they were not playing very, very well. Let's give Jim Harbaugh an awful lot of credit. He's brought this football team around.
We're going to see if they come around. We're also going to see if the Kentucky Wildcats can just keep on going with their one-trick pony Wildcat, because what they're doing is they beat Vanderbilt 14-7 and just hand the ball off. They had 18 yards passing, but won 14-7. Now, they have a big game ahead, but you saw this game about Vanderbilt. Mark, your thoughts?
This game was a snoozer. It was a sleeper. I was falling asleep watching this game. Benny Snell Jr., if he doesn't tote the ball like he totes the ball, they don't win. When you've got a quarterback that goes 3 for 9 passing, Coach, 18 yards passing, net passing, 1 touchdown, you look at the stats and you look at the game and you're saying, how in the heck did this team win this football game? They play terrific defense as they usually do. You got a quarterback on the other side of the ball, Vanny, throwing the ball all around the football field, but not getting in the end zone but 1 time. But here's the key to this game. They don't win without their defense, because you can't be a one-trick pony, as you said, just running the ball with Benny Snell Jr., because they'll load up the box and they'll make you throw the ball. That's what's going to happen to Kentucky down the road. They're going to have to throw the football to win, and they can't do it because they haven't done it thus far.
I can't believe you said that was a snoozer. I thought it was a great game. I loved watching the game because the outcome was in doubt. It was tied for the longest time, and Vanderbilt had opportunities. They had opportunities to take the lead in the 4th quarter, and the game is at Kentucky. You could not say this team's going to win in that 4th quarter, but the fact is that Wilson did throw for 18 yards, which is about his average, I think. However, he can run the football. Wilson can run the football. It's going to be difficult, and I love Kentucky defense, and let's give somebody an awful lot of credit. I think he's one of the best defensive players in the country. That's Josh Allen, the senior outside linebacker, like 6'4". He can rush the passer. He can cover people. That guy is a great football player. And so the fact is, Kentucky's still alive in the national championship race. If they win out and beat Alabama, they'll be there. So as long as a heartbeat, there's hope. Well,
there's got to be more than hope, because old Mr. Allen is going to meet Mr. Locke next week in Columbia, Missouri. We'll see how that goes. Well, our last game in the Rapid 5 is the Citadel went up to VMI for that Silver Shacko, and guess what? It was tough. It's going back to Charleston. It's going to stay for the 12th year in a row. Citadel beat VMI 34-32. Hard-fought game. Came down to the end. Jordan Black, leading rusher, 2 touchdowns for the Citadel. But if you heard about Reese Yadinsky, VMI tied a school record 5 touchdown passes. Mark.
Well, Citadel runs the ball. They were 16th in the FCS rushing the ball coming into the game. They ran for 335 yards to VMI's 65 yards. I thought that was the key. They wore them down. This is a great football game. They were tied 14-14 at half, 28-20 in the third quarter. This is one of those games that came down the wire. When your opposing quarterback throws for not 4, but 5 touchdown passes, you're supposed to lose. But VMI, they couldn't hang in there and win it at the end. Hey, give all the credit to the Citadel. Like I said before the game, they were going to win, and they did win.
I picked VMI, and they sure won the football game. VMI has 3 turnovers. In addition, that they outgained Citadel by 140 yards. You don't turn the football over, you end up winning the football game. I did not count on them turning the ball over 3 different times. I can't believe they did that to me, but they have great young men at VMI. When I was at William Mary, loved going up there. Just a great atmosphere.
Well, Mark, down in Charleston, they've got word to me that you're welcome anytime because of that pick. And, Coach, you can come too. But Mark gets to ride up front. Well, gentlemen, that was our Rapid 5 contest. So, really quickly, because I don't think it's going to change much, let's talk about your national championship picks. Mark, you had Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Washington.
Nope, changed it to Michigan. Changed it to Michigan last week.
That's right, changed it to Michigan. And they still have Alabama. Now, Coach, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and you had put in Ohio State, but they lost. So, are you staying pat, Coach?
I can't stay with Ohio State at the present time as long as they cannot run the football and the fact that they've given up so many big plays on defense. If they lost to Purdue, that's one thing. But it just shows the inability to run the ball consistently, the inability to play great defense. I cannot. And who am I going to put in there as my 4th? I think I'm going to put in bye. I think I'm going to give Alabama a bye into the national championship. But seriously, I'm not going to put anybody in there, but I'm going to wait to see what happens to Oklahoma, what happens to Michigan, what happens to Washington State. The way they're playing, I think that they had 1 3-point loss, 39-36 to Southern Cal. They could possibly win over. Right now, I am going to hold it to 3.
You can't do a bye. You got to pick a team. You can't wait till the end of the season to pick a team to find out who wins or loses. You got to pick a team now.
Who are you to set the rules? All of a sudden, he's the moderator. You are setting the rules. Okay, if I got to pick one, Louisiana Tech. No.
Well, the Bulldogs.
They got 2 losses weekend. Okay, I am going to put in Oklahoma.
You can't. They're taken.
No. Put in Washington State. Put in Washington State.
Well, I
didn't come here prepared for a 4th. I only had 3.
Well, Coach, I think Coach Mike Leake, the Pirate, will appreciate that he's now in the running. And, oh, by the way, stranger things have happened. So, gentlemen, that's our national championship picks. We're going to get ready to talk about Week 9 in college football.